At the beginning of spring, the two storks finally returned to the nest after a long journey from Africa. The nest was on top of a wooden pole with telephone cables, which had fallen into disuse long ago. On one side of the nest, the storks could see a farm. On the other side, there were fields and woods as far as the eye could see. Last year, the storks hadn't had any children, and they really wished that they would get babies this year. But first, the stork's nest had to be put in order. Although the couple were on the same nest as last year, that didn't mean that there wasn't any work to be done. Oh no. Storms in the autumn and winter, with wind and rain, and hail and snow, had damaged the nest. The two birds were flying to and fro with branches and twigs to fill the holes and to seal the cracks. When the repairs were completed, the two storks threw their heads back on their back and clattered with their beaks. Storks clatter with their long beaks to warn of danger or to show that they are having fun and to show that they love each other. And sure enough, a few days later, Mother Stork laid her first egg. A few days later, a second. And after a few more days, a third. Father and Mother looked proudly at the eggs in the nest. Mother Stork was the first to brood. By sitting on the eggs, they stay warm, and the chicks inside can grow. If the eggs are too cold, the chicks do not grow and die. So it is vital that a mother bird or a father bird remain on the eggs to keep them warm. Continues to brood. Not with all bird species, fathers also brood. But stork father birds are emancipated and do not mind brooding. If one of the two is brooding, then the other is not just idling. The other goes out to look for food for his and her love. A month later, Mama Stork heard ticking against the inside of one of the eggs. She clattered with her beak to call Father so he could witness the hatching. First, a hole appeared in the shell, and a little beak appeared. Not much later, a stork chick crawled out of the egg. A boy, a son. Father and Mother felt very proud. The baby bird began to chirp and reminded the parents that the really hard work had begun. Mother sat down on the remaining eggs, and Father went looking for food for Mum and the baby. Carefully, Father selected some easily digestible earthworms, plucked them out of the soil, and quickly brought them back to the nest for the little one. Father chewed the earthworm somewhat, and then let it gently glide into the beak of his baby. Now that the young one had had his first nutrition, Father went looking for a hearty meal for Mother. A moment later, he caught a frog. Mother would enjoy that. The day after, the second egg hatched. A girl this time. It took 3 days before the last egg hatched. Another boy. Father and Mother named their youngest Stan. Now that all the eggs had hatched, Father and Mother were both able to seek food for the 3 chicks. And that was a good thing, because growing children, also stork chicks, need a lot of food. The parents flew back and forth to nourish the 3, to satisfy the hunger of their children. It was spring, and of course, in the spring, it sometimes rains heavily. One day, the sky darkened with clouds. First, there was drizzle, then little drops, and finally, it was raining cats and dogs. Stan's sister complained, I'm getting soaked. What awful weather! When will it finally stop? Stan had an idea. Let's go under Mother's wing. That was a marvellous plan. Mother spread her great wings over the nest, and the kids could hide under there as if they were in a large tent. If you have ever been in a tent while it is raining outside, you will know how much fun it can be. Safe and dry inside, with the sound of rain tap, tap, tap against the tent. Well, for the little ones, it was exactly the same, and their moods improved, especially when Stan saw a silver lining. There was going to be food in abundance after the rain. Rain causes the worms to come above ground. They engorge themselves with water and are wonderfully tender. And so the little ones huddled under Mother's wings, listening to the sound of the rain, with their beaks smacking and thinking of all those nice, juicy earthworms that Father would collect. The stork chicks grew rapidly. Soon enough, they were big birds. It was time for their first flying lessons. Father and Mother demonstrated on the edge of the nest how the children ought to move their wings and safely land on the nest again. After a few times, they understood and joined Father and Mother to learn to search for food. Storks eat fish, frogs, worms, and occasionally a mouse. They prefer to look for food in a shallow lake or where it is muddy, in open farmers' fields, for example. When grain, corn, or grass is too high, storks cannot see their prey, and hunting is difficult. It was summer, and there came a period of heat and drought. The mud became hard. The country was dusty. When the farmer drove in the fields on his tractor, huge dust clouds formed behind the tractor, which floated slowly with the wind. Fish swam deeper in water, where it was less warm. Worms took shelter underground, and the frogs had to travel longer and longer distances to get from one pond to another. Ugh! The frogs are awfully tough due to the drought, exclaimed Father Stork, when he finally found one. I can't swallow. I can't get them down my throat. It's high time it rained. Then the frogs will be juicy again. The other storks in the nest nodded in agreement, except for Stan. Stan replied, But Dad, this is a perfect time to learn to thermal fly. Shall we? The children looked hopeful at Father, and Mother laughed. Yes, Stan is right, she said. Let's take advantage of the heat to teach you how to use thermals and prepare for the big trip in autumn. You must know that when the sun shines, the air above the land heats up and rises. Storks can fly well, but rising warm air allows the storks to circle up, higher and higher, without effort, just by extending their wings. From high altitude, they let themselves glide down. Gliding down, they travel for miles without tiring. So the whole family went to practice thermal flying. Father and Mother showed in what places thermals were to be expected. The kids loved it and enjoyed the warm air flowing around their heads. They admired the views from so high, and they loved the long glide very far from the nest. Now the children had to do it themselves. They had to find a warm airstream, circle up, and there they glided back again in the direction of the nest. Once landed, the children rattled their beaks with excitement. And Mother agreed, "Yes, Stan, that was a good idea. A nice trip. It was a beautiful day." At the end of the summer, the farmer felt that soon the autumn rains would come. How a farmer knows? Well, he feels this in the wind on his face. He smells it in the air. And he sees it in the colour of the sky and the clouds. It was time to harvest the wheat. The farmer borrowed a combine from his neighbour and began harvesting the crop. A combine is a machine that picks the wheat and then separates the wheat germs from the spikes. An immense machine that vibrates and rumbles and stomps. Mother Stork covered her ears and uttered, "What a noise! I want it to stop." Stan comforted his mother and explained that when the grain was harvested, it would be a lot easier to find food in the fields. Stan promised that after the farmer had finished his work, he would look for food for Mother, and then they would feast together. Mother Stork cuddled Stan with her beak in his feathers. Oh, how much she loved the boy. Slowly, it was time for the family to leave for Africa. Storks don't remain in winter because they cannot find food, with snow and ice covering the land and water. Therefore, storks fly to Africa. This is called migration. Stan's brother was not looking forward to the trip. "Such a long journey," he sighed. "Do we really have to leave?" Father reiterated that storks have been making this trip for a long time, as long as anyone can remember, and it would take a month. Stan reminded his brother of the strange beasts that they would encounter on the journey. The children were now enthusiastic. "Shall we leave right away?" "Soon enough," said Mother and Father. "This week we eat a lot and rest well. Then we will leave." And so the whole stork family flew off towards Africa on a warm autumn day. Using thermals, the storks circled higher and higher and floated southward. The route went over mountains, then they had a great sea on their right wing, and still further they crossed a narrow channel. Now they flew along a river where frogs were in abundance. Father warned of the tooth-beaked beasts, long green beasts with short legs and a thick tail. These beasts swam quietly through the water, looked like a tree trunk, harmless. But if a stork looked for food on the banks, such a tooth-beak beast could suddenly strike, at a speed that you would not expect from such a big creature with short legs. When they opened their large mouth, long rows of sharp teeth sparkled. Mother said they were going to see more strange beasts shortly. A few days later, Stan, his brother and sister, saw for the first time the two-hump animal. At least, that was what Mother called it. The animal had 4 legs and 2 curious humps on its back. But what was that? That was the weirdest thing the stork children had ever seen. Yellow beast with brown blots, elegant thin legs. They had a fantastic long neck. Storks, obviously, have a long neck in proportion to their bodies. But this long neck animal had a neck as long as a tree. Beautiful. "It's not far now," commented Father and Mother. They flew past herds of dashed horses. These creatures looked like horses, but with black and white stripes across their bodies. And there, look! That was perhaps the most beautiful thing the stork children had ever seen. Mighty big beasts, simply colossal, with large ears, wide legs, a thin tail, 2 huge long teeth jutting forward, and a long thick hose at the front of the head. With their hose, they put food in their mouth, drank, made loud trumpet noises, and they used it to spray water like a fountain. "You are right, little brother," said Stan's older brother. "A wonderful journey, the most beautiful things I have ever seen." The family found a stork colony, a large group of storks. They landed down beside it. Father and mother told the children that this would be their home during the winter. "Children, you have done very well on your first trip to Africa," said Dad. "Stan," said Mother, "I am proud that you are my son. You are always in a good mood, and you know how to cheer us up. That's something not many storks have, not something which many storks are able to do." His father, brother, and sister agreed with Mother. With loud beak clattering, they showed how much they loved the youngest in the family. The clattering was taken over by all the storks that stood in the field. If you had been there then in Africa, you would have to have put your fingers in your ears. That's how loud the storks clattered.